And so when I raised the question about our board, I was told that I should ask for a special board meeting during the 30-day comment period for our board to submit public comments like the other agencies. I assume boards are the general public. So my assumption is the process will be that anything that we receive as comment today, and I've already received some comments from other folks about some of our portions of the plan, we will submit that as part of all public comment that goes to workforce development. And then my assumption is they will use the month of January to incorporate the comments in a way that they deem appropriate. And I don't know what that really means because they're the driving entity. The goal will be that by February it will be resubmitted back to the State Workforce Investment Board in the governor's office for final approval, then to be submitted and signed by the governor in March of 2016. Let me also tell and share with you that when we attended the CSAVR meeting, and for those of you who are not familiar with CSAVR, CSAVR stands for Council of State Administrators in Vocational Rehabilitation. It is in essence the state VR program's national membership and professional association. And they have 2 conferences every year. They usually have a spring conference always in Washington, D.C., and then they have a fall conference that they rotate. So this was in Seattle. It was November 2nd through the 4th. And all the state VR programs were in attendance. And the general sense that we got from at least the states that we interacted with was that those states had not even started the process. So in some ways, we are well ahead of the curve, but you can see that this is a lengthy process, and it still isn't perfect because you all haven't had time to see this before we had to submit the draft on the day we were actually writing it. I'll also tell you that I talked to the new director of the state of Mississippi, and remember I told you that we were given the draft Mississippi plan by the consultants here in Georgia as a guide. I thanked the director from Mississippi, and he had never even seen his own plan.
Oh, my.
So it's a rough process, and I think all states are experiencing, since they've never done it this way, what's it going to be like going forward. But to just conclude those remarks, and then I'll answer any questions anybody might have. We certainly did get some great comments from some of our board members, and I've taken those and I've tabbed them in my document in the order of the pages. So one of my suggestions, and they're very good comments, one of my suggestions is that maybe one way to approach this is that I use the comments that were already submitted by our board members and walk through in the same sequence as the pages are numbered, and then raise that for the full board's consideration. Some of them are pointing out some mistakes in wording or some clarification that needs to be some rewording, and I've already taken the liberty, I've done some rewording that I'm going to suggest as a possible change, and then maybe after we go through that, just open up to the floor for any additional comments if that seems like an easier way to go through this. But
That certainly sounds like a productive way to me, Greg. This is Jimmy.
Okay.
Because I feel like with this much information, it is going to be difficult unless we've got a fairly discrete process to do that. So if you're talking about all comments that you've already received, now just from the board, or
just
include comments from other folks?
I'll share. I only received one other non-board comment, and that was from our partner organization in our Federal Career Pathways Grant, Parent to Parent. Their request is in the plan. We quoted them and referenced them as Parent to Parent, and they asked that that wording be changed to Parent of Georgia.
Okay.
So that's the only non-board comment.
Okay. Well, that seems logical to me. So why don't we follow that pattern and let you go ahead and address those that you've already received and then open it to other questions.
Let me, before I do, and I appreciate that, this is Greg again, let me do one other, and this was to your comment, Tom, and I thought it was a relevant one. You know, as Tom and Jimmy both know, in the past, when the VR program would develop its 3-year state plan, they would do it in a collaborative way with RSA, the federal funding agency. And they would do it with ongoing dialogue, so they would know they were putting things in the plan that already RSA would have had some presumptive approval of. In this scenario, we could not have any conversation with RSA. So this plan is really developed without any conversation with RSA, which is completely different than the way it was done in the past. So we have no real sense this morning as of whether RSA will review this and support it, because they're going to be seeing things that they have not seen yet before. And my understanding is that's the way all states did this. I will tell you that we had 2 conversations, telephone conversations, with our state liaison at RSA, and they really didn't want to be involved in the plan process. So that too is different than the way it used to work. So again, this is kind of one of those, nobody's done it this way before, and I'm sure that other states will go through similar experiences that we're having now with our state, and hopefully, as we go through this years to come, this will become much more integrated with our boards and with the community and the general public and citizens with disabilities in the State Rehab Council. So, but I thought that was a good question, Tom, and I appreciate that. So, the section of the plan that we're really asking for comments on today is really just the VR section. You all as individual citizens have the freedom and the right to make comments on any other portion of the unified plan, which is 199 pages, 198 pages or something, I believe. So you could do that as citizens, but as a board, you can really only make comment on the VR section of the plan, because that's within the scope of your authority. And the VR section of the plan starts on page 140. It's Roman numeral 9, vocational rehabilitation, and it goes through page 187, where it ends about a third of the way down, and then the next section, section 10, is the section that's called Temporary Assistance for Needy Families and Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, TANF. So the comments that we're going to be able to offer will just be from pages 140 to pages 188. And what I did, based on the comments that I received, and I appreciate, for example, Jimmy, you being able to reference the actual page in the section. So I've got them in order. So what I'd like to do with the board's permission is just go through the pages and go to the direct page and reference that page and the item, and then share the comment with you, and what I suggest maybe if there's a change needed.
Okay.
All right. So the first one really is on page 142. And it's item number small x, and the paragraph, and the comment really is that it's a positive comment. I agree with the inclusion, but let me just read that section. It says, the Georgia State Rehab Council, SRC, strongly supports amending current 361.45C2 by adding a new paragraph V that would require a DSU, designated state unit, to provide eligible individuals who are entitled to Social Security benefits under Titles 2 or Title 16 of the Social Security Act information on available assistance and supports available to them when entering the workforce. For example, benefits planning and financial supports. And the comment we received is, I agree that the inclusion of information regarding available assistance and supports for those eligible for Social Security benefits would be a very good idea. This would assist in educating those individuals regarding those resources that might assist them in returning to work. So it sounds like it's a supportive comment, and really the spirit or the intention of that section is that the State Rehab Council is saying for those people who are going to be going to work through the VR program, if they are receiving Social Security benefits, it would be very helpful to give them information about the impact of the job they're taking or getting on their potential benefits. some of you know, and most of you probably do know, that sometimes if you take a job that pays too much, you actually risk losing your Social Security benefits. So the intent of this paragraph is really to require the designated state unit, which in our case is the GVRA agency. The board is the designated state agency, the DSA, but the designated state unit, to provide that kind of benefits information, or benefits navigation and benefits planning to any individual who would be going through the VR program into a job. Is there any other comments on that? So I think if here, I'm just going to be pretty fast with my comments, but if there's none, I think there's really nothing recommended to change there. It's just a supportive comment that makes a lot of sense.
And Greg, I'm going to interrupt you just a second. I think we may have had one or two other people join us. I heard some beeps,
Okay.
and we might want to check in on that. I may be wrong, but just checking.
Do we have any?
Yes.
Do we? This is Greg. Do we have any new attendees on the call?
Let me just call the name, Jonathan
Oh, okay.
Taylor. Jonathan, are you up with us? Faye Loggins. Faye, are you with us? Okay, we still have the same number of board members then.
Oh, I'm
All right,
sorry.
thank you, Louise. That's all right. I heard a beeper.
I heard it too, Louise. So is there any other comments on that item 10 while we're on that one? If it's okay with the board, I'll just, hearing none, I'll move on to the next item.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
the next item is the same page, it's just the next item, it's XI on page 142. And it reads, the Georgia State Rehab Council supports RSA in providing additional clarification in proposed 361.22 regarding entity. The local education agency or the designated state unit is responsible for providing transition services to students with disabilities, parentheses, who are also VR consumers, when such services fall under the purview of both entities. Also, the Georgia State Rehab Council believes it would be helpful to the entities involved for RSA to provide further clarification or directives that assist in decisions related to which entity shall be responsible for providing transition or pre-employment transition services that can be considered both a special education or a VR service. Additionally, the RSA to clarify if it will allow those decisions to be made at the state and local level as part of the collaboration between the VR agencies, state educational agencies, and local education agencies. That's the paragraph. The comment is, I agree that clarification of the responsibilities of both the VR agency and the local educational agency would enhance the cooperative efforts of serving students with disabilities in the educational system. So again, the comment's a positive comment, and I think the intent of this paragraph is really that if two agencies, in this case a local education agency and VR, are working with students specifically in school, there needs to be clarity around who's responsible to do what. And the SRC is requesting that the RSA provide a little clarification in terms of how is that accomplished and can that be done at the state or local level versus just being dictated from the federal government. I personally think that's it's a great point, and as we continue to increase transition services, the clarity among those two entities or any entity working with that population would be important. So again, I don't think there's any recommended change. I think it's a positive comment. And unless there's any other comments to that section, I'd like to go on to the next one.
Anyone have any questions? If not, proceed, Greg. Thank you.
All right. The next one is on page 154. Item G, and item G is coordination with employers. Describe how the state designated unit will work with employers to identify competitive integrated employment and career exploration opportunities in order to facilitate the provision of coal, and then it goes into the whole paragraph. And the comment is that it says, I strongly agree with this statement. One of the main tenets of the rehabilitation process is the careful and thorough consideration of an individual's abilities, interest, and potential in helping guide them to a meaningful and rewarding vocational goal. So I think the spirit of this is that really, because the law is sometimes viewed as the job-driven law, I think that the spirit of this section is really, it can be about the job, but it also has to be about an appropriate match based on the individual's abilities, their interests, so that we're not mismatching people in the wrong jobs. And so I think it's a positive comment. Again, I didn't get the sense that there's a recommended change.
Greg, this is Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to support that too, and to say that that is the essence of the VR program. It is what makes VR unique among other programs that are designed to place people in employment. So this speaks to our uniqueness as an agency.
That's right. That's right, Tom. I appreciate that comment. Any other comments on that one, or I'll move to the next one? Okay, hearing none. The next one's on page 155, and this is actually a recommendation that's going to, I think, require a change. It has to do with the second paragraph on that page. The first full paragraph. The paragraph reads this way: to that end, GVRA has recently established a business division with the agency, and its primary function will be to create a single, focused approach and strategy to engage employers in the most meaningful way. Under the GVRA business division, all agency efforts of engaging, contacting, and relating to local businesses and corporate entities will be coordinated into a unified approach. The next sentence is the sentence I think that's going to require a change, because I think it's not accurate. It says, the sentence reads, the agency has hired a director of the business division, and all GVRA and VR program staff will be supervised through this division, period. That's not accurate. And I'm glad that both Jimmy and I think Tom picked up on that. Really, and the recommended reword, I don't know where that came from. This is probably one of those oversights where we didn't pick it up. It really should read, here's the corrected version I would like to recommend. The agency has hired a director of the business division, period. The section about, and all GVRA and VR program staff will be supervised through this division should be struck and omitted from that, because it's really not accurate.
Okay. All right. Now, do we need to make a formal board change recommendation for that? Is this formal enough at this point that we need to do that, or is that something that you can just adjust at this point, and then proceed with it change?
Yeah, I thought about it, Jimmy, and my suggestions to the board is this. I would suggest, if we go through all of these, that I will ask the board for a vote to approve this draft section of the plan with the recommended changes.
Okay.
So we could
Just
capture
take
all of
them at
one time. Right.
Go with the question.
Right, right. So basically, the board would then be saying, we support this with these changes incorporated into it.
Okay. All right. Anyone have any comment regarding that?
This is Sandy. I think that's a great idea.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sandy. And I'm remiss in not getting my name out there front, so I'll try to do better about that. Okay. Move on then, Greg.
Yeah, and just to clarify, this is Greg again, just to clarify, all GVRA and VR staff are supervised by many other divisions, as we all know. So, for example, VR counselors will not be supervised by the business division director. So I don't know how that got in there. I think it was just an oversight, but I think it needs to be struck and omitted.
Okay.
All right, then the next one is on page 157. And number 2, which deals with transition services. And again, this I think is a very good point that was brought up, and I think it's going to need some rewording. Here's the paragraph as it currently reads in the plan. Number 2 is transition services, including pre-employment transition services for students and youth with disabilities. And then it's really the first sentence that causes concern. The first sentence under that reads, GVRA has made the internal decision that serving youth and students with disabilities should be the major focus of VR services to have the greatest long-term impact on Georgians with disabilities. And the concern raised by a couple of board members is that really sends a negative message to other citizens with disabilities who aren't youth or students with disabilities. And I think that's a very good catch, because that's certainly not what we want to say, because our mandate as a VR program, as you all know, is to serve all Georgians with disabilities of all ages. So...
Greg, this is Sandy. I agree 100%, but I also think that it's important to emphasize that maybe the gist of it was to get the message out there of the importance of reaching students as early as possible.
That's a good point. Let me share with you all a draft rewording I've done of that sentence. See if this is a little bit more palatable. So my rewording suggestion is GVRA has made the internal decision that serving youth and students with disabilities should be an expanded focus of VR services in addition to continuing to serve all ages and all disabilities to have the greatest long-term impact on Georgians with disabilities. So I'm trying to subtly say that that's not all we're going to do, but it still needs to be, and maybe a better word would be intensified or expanded or something like that.
This is Amy. I think I do like the rewording. I also agree with Sandy in the field of rehabilitation of youth. I think the early intervention, if there's even a little more that could be added that
Okay.
stresses that there's an emphasis on early identification and intervention. I think that would be a good a good emphasis there.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yes, it is.